Today, I'll be sharing some highlights over the last year or so into my journey of collecting classical music on vinyl. About 5 or so years ago, I inevitably fell into discovering the beauty and power within classical music. From that time until the present, I've spent countless hours researching, listening, and unfolding the intricacies therein. In the beginning, it was quite daunting and overwhelming to simply understand the distinction between the composer, conductor, orchestra, with its myriad of variations in instrumentation and, of course, the musical repertoire. This was only intensified when coupled with a near countless list of interpretations and versions of the same piece of music, performed, recorded, and subsequently pressed and released over so many decades and eras. I've gained so much wisdom and clarity from several channels here on YouTube during that process. If you're just starting out into collecting classical vinyl and have a deep interest in the quality of both the recording and the pressing, or if you'd just simply like to go deeper, I'd highly recommend investigating videos from Michael Johnson at Poetry on Plastic, Greg Arnold at Flowering Spikes, and the maestro Mark Ward at Music on Record. Each possess a wide gamut of knowledge and historical insights into the genre on vinyl. The respective channels will be linked below if you're curious. There are also a handful of brick-and-mortar shops I've discovered here in LA and otherwise that have proven to be troves of specific labels and pressings that I myself have gravitated toward in my collecting. I'll also mention these places by names and link them below. I'm primarily interested in clean copies of very specific titles. 95% of the time, this ends up being an all-analog reissue, due to the fastidious remastering of the material from the original analog tapes. I will pick up an original pressing if I come across a clean copy of one I'm particularly fond of, but I found it to be few and far between, where the cleanliness and the price of the record are congruous. The following titles I will showcase have been slowly and meticulously collected over the past 16 months or so. Due to the sheer volume, I won't go too far in depth into discussing the music itself, or the minutiae of the specific pressing, but I can say that most of these titles share a commonality of deep dynamics in their presentation and a very tactile richness in their sonic imaging, overall resulting in the listening experience being drastically enhanced and enlivened, much so over a lesser vinyl pressing of the same material, and night and day over a digital or streaming version of the same music. I hope this overview provides a good starting point for some of you in your journey, in terms of labels, composers, or conductors that may be of interest, and that it may also shine a light on some titles that aren't so often mentioned. I'll also share a playlist of selections from this collection at the end of the video. Starting from the most recent acquisition and moving backwards, we have Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, featuring Jascha Heifetz with Fritz Reiner conducting the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This is an RCA Living Stereo reissue by Classic Records on 200-gram vinyl, purchased at the Stereo Unlimited shop in San Diego, California. This is an amazing shop full of hi-fi gear and audiophile pressings, primarily leaning into the jazz and classical realms. Rob from The Wax was kind enough to share the intel of this shop with me recently. From the same shop, this is the L'Arlésienne and Carmen suites by Bizet, conducted by Ernest Ansermet, recorded at Victoria Hall in Geneva. This is a double 45 RPM limited edition numbered set from the original recordings group, remastered by Bernie Grunman and pressed at RTI in Camarillo, California. Next was a gift from Rob from the YouTube channel The Waxed. This is Nights in the Garden of Spain and the Harpsichord Concerto from Manuel de Falla, featuring Gonzalo Soriano with the Paris Conservatoire Orchestra, conducted by Burgos. Originally on his master's voice, this is an Alto High-Fidelity, all-analog reissue. The next handful of items were purchased from Luna Music via Discogs. Luna is a shop in Indianapolis, Indiana, which had procured a large audiophile classical collection recently. Thanks to Greg at Flowering Spikes for letting me know about this. First of the bunch is Rostropovich, incredible cellist playing music by Britten, Schumann, and Debussy. Again, this is an Alto High-Fidelity reissue from the original Decca issue. Next is a title from a label I only have a few releases from. This is an EMI reissue of The Four Last Songs by Strauss, featuring vocalist Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, conducted by George Zell with the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra. Immaculate vocals from Schwarzkopf and a wonderful pressing. Next is the Manfred Symphony from Tchaikovsky, conducted by Andrei Previn with the London Symphony Orchestra. I keep my box sets in a different place than the rest of my collection, and failed to pull this and one other title for this video. This is an Alto High-Fidelity reissue in a box set format. It's 3 sides of music and a symphony I wasn't previously familiar with. This is a seemingly very difficult album to track down. I love Tchaikovsky, so I'm very happy to add this to the collection. Next is ballet music from Les Cides. This is music by Massenet, conducted by Louis Fremeau with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. This is another album and piece of music I was unfamiliar with. The specific pressing is by Clavier. It was mastered at the Mastering Lab and pressed at RTI. I had seen Scott Wilson at the Pressing Matters do an in-depth discussion on this video, which I will also link below, if you're curious to learn more about this piece of music and the specific pressing. Next, a gem in my classical collection. This is Barbaroli Conducts English String Music. Originally pressed on his master's voice, this is an all-analog alto high-fidelity reissue featuring Elgar and Williams. Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tallis is one of my favorite pieces of music, here played by the Sinfonia of London. This is some of the best string tone of any records I own. The low end is airy and rich and fills the room with its sound. Next is the Giselle Ballet from Adam, conducted by Jean Martinon with the Paris Conservatoire Orchestra. Originally recorded in 1959 and put out by Decca, this is a Speaker's Corner all-analog reissue. With the last of the Luna Music Hall, this is the Masquerade Suite by Khachaturian with the Comedians by Kabalevsky, both conducted by Kondrashin. This is the Classic Records single disc 33 RPM issue. I originally was always put off by this record for the album cover, but the Masquerade Suite has won me over with a few active listening sessions, and I've grown to love and adore this cover. Classic Records also did a single-sided multiple 45 RPM cut, but it only features the Comedians and not the Masquerade Suite, which is the crowning suite of this release in my opinion. Next was a new in-stock purchase from Analogue Productions, from their RCA Living Stereo series, which in my opinion is the best of the all-analog classical reissue series in the market today. Here we have Debussy and Ravel with Iberia and the Alborada del Gracioso, with Fritz Reiner conducting the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Remastered by Ryan Smith at Sterling Sound in Nashville and pressed at Quality Record Pressings in Salina, Kansas. This is a 200-gram pressing and features a sturdy high-gloss jacket. This music ranges from delicate to grand, hyper-dynamic with a gentle, resonant bloom. Next is a pickup from a shop near my house called Rockaway Records. They from time to time purchase titles in both classical and jazz genres from an ex-RTI employee, some of them still sealed, most of them open but seemingly unplayed, from across the Classic Records and Analogue Productions labels. This is an RCA Living Stereo reissue, with Martinon conducting the Paris Conservatoire Orchestra. It's the 7th Symphony and the Russian Overture from Prokofiev. Next is the Scottish Fantasy and the Concerto No. 5 from Vieuxtemps and Bruch, conducted by Malcolm Sargent with Jascha Heifetz on the violin. This is a double 33 RPM, 200-gram Clarity vinyl pressing from Classic Records. This was found at the High-Fidelity record shop in West Adams, Los Angeles, which is a record shop run by 2 ex-Classic Records employees. They don't keep any of their dead-stocked sealed Classic Records on the sales floor. With a little prodding, the collection was taken out front and I got to pick a few titles. Back to Rockaway Records in Silver Lake. This is Gottschalk and Gould with the Utah Symphony Orchestra conducted by Abravanel, A Night in the Tropics and the Latin American Symphonette. This is one of the very first reissues Analogue Productions did, number 3 in their catalog from 1991. This is an all-tube recording from December 1962, reissued from the Vanguard Classic series, pressed on Virgin vinyl at RTI. This is a numbered and limited edition. Next is perhaps the most dynamic recording I've ever heard on vinyl. From Reference Recordings, this is Symphonie Fantastique from Berlioz, conducted by Kojian with the Utah Symphony. Greg from Flowering Spikes featured this in a video previously and deeply piqued my interest. This is one that's sure to push the limits of your system in all ways. The grandiose highs and crashing timpani bowl you over. This album also features a warning label on the back, asking you not to turn your volume up too loud, since there's such a huge dynamic shift in level between the quiet sections and the bombastic ones. A highly recommended demo disc if you can ever find this pressing. Next, the second ever reissue from Analogue Productions. Here, Natania Davrath, sings the songs of the Auvergne from Cantilupe. This is a beautiful vocal-centric album sung in the original French dialect, recorded in 1963 in Vienna, originally released in 1972 by the Vanguard Classics. This is an all-tube analog recording, limited number edition on virgin vinyl pressed at RTI. A rare title to find in the wild. I was lucky to find this in the bins at Rockaway Records. That same day, I also found this sealed 1996 reissue of Bizet's Carmen ballet with the Bolshoi Theater Orchestra. This is a reissue from Alto High-Fidelity, some of my favorite ballet music from my collection. Highly recommended. Moving on, this is another double 45 reissue from the original recordings group, ORG. Absolutely one of the better sounding records in my collection. Here, Clifford Curzon plays the Brahms Piano Concerto 1 in D minor, conducted by Zell with the London Symphony. I found this in the bins at Blind Dog Records in Huntington Beach for the original retail price, still sealed from its 2011 reissue. This was remastered by Bernie Grunman and pressed at RTI. For more insight into the ORG label, I did a label feature on a video previously on my channel. From that same trip to Blind Dog, this is one of two original issues in this collection. This is the French Touch. This is an Indianapolis pressing, 1S from 1959, featuring French music conducted by Munch with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, featuring The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Ducasse, Omphale's Spinning Wheel from Saint-Saëns, and Ravel's Mother Goose Suite, some of the highlights in this collection of music. This is the first original RCA Living Stereo title in my collection. There's something so beautifully tactile about the way they constructed the jackets with its high gloss, the shaded dog center label, and of course the immaculate music so perfectly captured on this recording. Another one from Blind Dog is this 2002 reissue by Classic Records, selections from Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet and Strauss's Till Eulenspiegel. This is a title I'd been hunting in the wild for a long time, and was happy to find it here at Blind Dog. The owner was kind enough to also clean this record for me on his KL Audio record cleaning machine. Lush, beautiful, sweeping, romantic music. Highly recommended. Back to Rockaway Records. Here's a title I've been searching high and low for. This is Ravel and Ibert with the Detroit Symphony conducted by Paul Perret. Highlights here include the Rhapsody Espagnole and the Ports of Call. This is the 33 RPM single disc version of this release. It was also done at double 45 featuring some extra music. This is a lush and lifelike recording, one where it seems as if you're almost sitting in the concert hall, taking it all in real time. Moving through the stack, this is catalog AP001 from Analogue Productions, 1992, with Tchaikovsky and the Symphony of Air, doing Virgil Thompson's The Plow That Broke the Plains and Suite from The River. Again, this is one of the early titles from the Vanguard Classic series. This was mastered by Doug Sachs at the Mastering Lab and pressed at RTI. Originally recorded in 1960 in the Manhattan Center in New York. The all-too remastering of this title, coupled with the virgin vinyl, give a grand soundstage and a massive headroom, plenty of space for each instrument to have their own distinct outline in the music. Back to the High-Fidelity record shop in West Adams. This was a deadstock sealed classic record pressing, Festival, collection of music by Kovalevsky, Tchaikovsky, Borodin, Mussorgsky, and Glinka, conducted by Fritz Reiner with the Chicago Symphony. I'm a big fan of Reiner and the Chicago Symphony, especially the RCA Living Stereo titles. This is boisterous and a bombastic collection of music that is not for the faint of heart. I can imagine it might have repelled some listeners from its original release in 1959. Finally, a new reissue, released in February of 2024. This is Heifetz playing The Lark, a mono 180-gram reissue from Impex Records. I purchased this one online from pre-order from Elusive Disc. Not one of my favorite pieces of music in general, but Heifetz's playing is miraculous. This was recorded in 1957, just east of Los Angeles in California. I hope this title is done well for Impex, and I cross my fingers for more high-quality analog reissues from that label. The final selection from High-Fidelity in West Adams. This was a sealed 4x45 RPM single-sided Clarity vinyl from the Classic Records 45 RPM series. Here, Bruno Walter conducts the Columbia Symphony Orchestra, playing Brahms' Fourth Symphony. This is a piece of music I have several other versions of, but I think now this is my favorite. I hold Walter in high regard, and will continue to look for more recordings of his conducting. This is another title that Scott from the Pressing Matters highlighted in a previous video. The way he described this music and this specific pressing, which is a double 45 RPM version from Analogue Productions, made me very curious. I sampled it online many times and decided I would try to look for it, and quickly found a still sealed copy from 2009 at Rockaway Records. The music on side A of this collection is A Night on Bear Mountain from Mussorgsky, one of the most absolutely dynamic pieces of classical music in my collection. This album originally came out on the RCA Victor Red Seal label in 1962. I finally got to take a trip to Rockaway Records with my friend Mark Ward. There I found this original recordings group ORG pressing of Grieg's Peer Gynt. I have a single 33 RPM version of this same music, cut by Speaker's Corner, but here spread out over 2 discs and cut at 45 RPM. The music somehow takes on a new life, with more space and more air around it. Also so happy to add another ORG title to the collection. I think I'm just now missing Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream. If you ever come across an ORG copy of one of the London reissues, I highly recommend picking it up. They're 9 times out of 10 dead quiet, with the music erupting out of the blackness. Always a beautiful listening experience. More Tchaikovsky here with the 1812 Overture, paired with Fingal's Cave and the Mephisto Waltz and the Tragic Overture from Mendelssohn, Liszt, and Brahms. Reiner again conducting the Chicago Symphony. This is a 4x45, single-sided 200-gram Classic Records pressing, originally issued in 1958. This one was pressed in the late aughts. After years on my Discogs want list, I finally saw this title pop up, made a lowball offer which was accepted. The jackets arrived with a slight ding, but all the vinyl was pristine. This title was also issued in the RCA Living Stereo series from Analogue Productions. Another new purchase from Analogue Productions' RCA Living Stereo series. This is music from Sibelius, with Jascha Heifetz again on the violin, this time with the Chicago Symphony, conducted by Handel. This is the Violin Concerto in D minor. This music was engineered by Louis Layton, who at the time was perceived to be one of the top engineers of classical music of this era. A masterful recording of a masterful performance of this beautiful music. In that same order from Analogue Productions, I finally pulled the trigger on this compilation of music entitled Witch's Brew. This is Alexander Gibson conducting the New Symphony Orchestra of London, with music by Arnold, Ravel, Mussorgsky, Rimsky-Korsakov, Camille Saint-Saëns, Engelbert Humperdinck, and Franz Liszt. This music is highly recommended if you're only starting out into classical music and don't want to dive into the deep end. This collection is highly approachable and easy to listen to, and despite its campy cover, the music is insanely well recorded and produced. The frequencies are alive and jump out of your speakers. This would be a great demo disc to show off your system. Last in the same Analogue Productions order is Bolero, featuring both Ravel and Debussy, and just the same as the others in this series, it was recut from the original analog tapes by Ryan Smith at Sterling Sound in Nashville, pressed at QRP in Salina, Kansas. For fans of percussion, this is a must. The repetitive rhythmic elements in this music are infectious. Stunning music that goes hand in hand with this gorgeous photo on the cover. The second of 2 original pressings, this time 1958's Hovhannes and Stravinsky's dual billing of Mysterious Mountain and The Fairy's Kiss Divertimento, conducted here by Fritz Reiner with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I found this one back at Blind Dog at Huntington Beach, again a first pressing, with 1S and 3S stamped on each side. Though clean to the naked eye, this record does have a lot of noise. After several cleanings, it still has audible noise. Fortunately, the price was low, but I'll still be searching for a replacement copy in the future. Another one from the RCA Living Stereo series from Analogue Productions that I kind of withheld from my collection just based on my lack of attraction to the cover. This is Fistulari conducting the Paris Conservatoire Orchestra with a compilation of ballet music from the opera, featuring music by Verdi, Saint-Saëns, Rossini, and Mussorgsky. I was pleasantly surprised when I dropped this on the turntable and it kept getting flipped back and forth over and over, listening to it multiple times in one sitting. Absolutely gorgeous, sweeping music, highly recommended if you're a fan of ballet music. Here, another Alto High-Fidelity reissue of a His Master's Voice title. This is Falla with a Philharmonic Orchestra conducted by Burgos, featuring the soprano vocals of soloist Victoria de Los Angeles. This is the three-cornered hat. I have a double 45 version of this music in a different iteration, and I think I actually might prefer this version. The introduction grabs your attention and doesn't let go. I play this a lot in the morning time, and it's a perfect way to wake up. I also somewhat like this traditional cover art, depicting a child being thrown into the air from this piece of fabric. Whether it's this version, the Speaker's Corner, or the ORG, I would highly recommend trying to hunt down a clean copy of this classic. Second of the two box sets from this large collection is La Fille Mal Gardée. This is music played by the orchestra of the Royal Opera House Covent Garden in England, music of Herold and Lanchbery. This is a quadruple vinyl 45 RPM single-sided set, 180 grams, that comes in this thin cardboard slipcase. I was aware of this album's existence and had never seen one in the wild until one day at Amoeba I saw it high up on the wall with a large price tag. A few weeks later I was lucky to find another copy in great condition at Blind Dog at Huntington Beach, near mint for a price half of what Amoeba was asking. The original recording for Decca was in 1962, repressed in 2002 in Germany for Speaker's Corner, which also released a single-disc 33 RPM version of the same music. I adore the cover art, the packaging, and the presentation of these multi-disc sets that Speaker's Corner released. They also did a similar release of Mendelssohn playing his Scotch Symphony that spread out over 3 discs. Perhaps my favorite piece of music by Albanese, this is Iberia, backed with Ravel's Rhapsody Espagnole. Both pieces are conducted by Jean Morel with the Paris Conservatoire Orchestra. The striking cover must have been in strong contrast to the other album covers of the day of the late 50s and early 60s. This is a 2 LP set released in 1995 by Classic Records. I found it for the original retail price at Rockaway Records, an insane find. Classic Records also issued an 8 LP set of this music that seems quite far out of reach, with the Analogue Productions double LP version of this music being the other Audiofile reissue worth seeking out. This is a legendary recording with a supremely floating, airy, high-end quality. I can vouch that the Classic Records and most likely the Analogue Productions both come highly recommended. Just a few more here. This is another title found at Rockaway Records. Again, another dead stock sealed copy, again sold to them by an ex-RTI employee. Here, this is Bartók's music for strings, percussion, and celesta with the Hungarian sketches. Reiner conducts the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This title was also done by Analogue Productions. Of course, the classic series were all cut by Bernie Grunman, with the RCA Living Stereo series for Analogue Productions being cut by Ryan Smith at Sterling Sound. Both remasterings from the original tapes are comparable and excellent. The edge between the two series probably going to Analogue Productions due to their high-gloss, heavy-duty stout and tip-on jackets. It's hard to go wrong with any title from that series. Down to the final 3 for this video. This is a 4 LP 45 RPM single-sided set, one of the gems of my collection. This is Prokofiev's Lieutenant Kije. Forgive my mispronunciation if it isn't correct. The last 2 discs of this set features the Song of the Nightingale by Stravinsky, which is also great, but the Prokofiev piece is the shining jewel of this set. And here again is Fritz Reiner conducting the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This music tells the story of this character from birth, romance, triumph, and their death. A beautiful and panoramic tapestry of music. An absolutely stunning performance, and a flawless capturing of this music. Perhaps an oft-overlooked title is the Balalaika Favorites from the Osipov State Russian Folk Orchestra. This was reissued in 2000 by Classic Records, on both single-disc 33 RPM like I have here, as well as on a 4 LP set. This was recorded in the Grand Hall at the Moscow Conservatory and produced by Wilma Kosart for the Mercury Living Presence, which alongside the RCA Living Stereo is probably the second most well-regarded classical labels of the era. If my memory serves me right, the Mercury team was commissioned to take all of their equipment to Russia to make this recording. While it's not my favorite music or something I listen to very often, it is a beautiful relic of time and a lovely document of this interesting music. Lastly, we have Shostakovich, The Age of the Gold Ballet Suite, and Symphony No. 1, Jean Martinon conducting the London Symphony Orchestra. Again, an extremely evocative and striking cover for this late 50s era. This is recorded at Kingsway Hall in England in December of 1957. repressed by Classic Records here in a single 33 RPM set. I found this again at the lovely Rockaway Records in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, for the original retail price from the early aughts. This music is playful, and the dynamism within the arrangements is alluring. A captivating listen from front to finish. This is one that demands your attention in an active listening session and rewards a patient ear. Thank you so much for watching. For more content and music, and a playlist with selections from all of these titles, please go to my Substack.